رحمكم الله إن الله سبحانه وتعالى خلق الخلق وافترض عليهم أن يعرفوه وأرسل الرسل فضلا منه ورحمة لعباده ليعلموا الناس الشرائع والأحكام ومن أشرف ما جاءوا به علم التوحيد وأن أول واجب على الشخص معرفة الله تعالى ومعرفة الله تعالى لا تكون إلا بالصفات. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. So inshallah, the purpose of these duru's, these classes, is to cover something we call Fard al-Ain, the Islamic essentials, basically. Often the way that this is taught, it's convoluted, it's broken down as if one is teaching babies. The whole Islamic pedagogy is broken down because it's not catered for the audience that we have. So inshallah, it's going to be more intellectual. I'm going to be asking you questions. If you're not willing to answer, then it's probably not the best place for you. Yeah, we don't take passive people. Yeah, the purpose of this class is not for you to just listen to what I'm saying and go home. It's for you to be receptive, to open up your minds. The human being has three universal faculties. The faculty of action, the faculty of knowledge, and the faculty of emotion. That's a universal principle. Everything that one can be, everything which forms the human triad, falls into that taxonomy. Very interesting, in Islam that translates to three sciences, three topics. The faculty of action translates to what we call fiqh, which is jurisprudence. The faculty of knowledge or belief translates to what we call aqidah, or theology, dialectic theology, if one is to be precise. And the faculty of emotion is what we call tasawwuf or tazkiyah, which is the science of the inner realm, that which discusses the haqa'iq al-ashya, things as they are in reality. That is what we call fard al-ain. That is what is, and there's levels of that which is obligatory for every person to know as a Muslim. Yeah. The faculty of action is what we call fiqh. It's very, very kind of, these are radical concepts in a way because they are holistically encapsulating every single action that you do, from picking up a water bottle to dashing a phone at someone's face. Everything has a ruling, it has a hukum in the Sharia. Every single thing, it has a legal ruling. So when we talk about the faculty of action, when we talk about fiqh, everything has a ruling. From the way that we talk, from the way that we dress, from the way that we speak, from the way that we sleep. Every single thing has a legal ruling in Islam. So when we talk about Islamic law, it's not only pertaining to politics and warfare and food and drink. It's not even only referring to rituals, it's referring to everything. It's holistically encapsulating. When it comes to theology, that is what we call belief. Yeah, our beliefs and our knowledge, what we do, how we know what to believe and where we derive our information from. And the final thing is tasawwuf or tazkiyah. This is a science in today's day and age, in a day of hedonistic materialism, which has been it's been widely distorted. It's been used as a derogatory term, in fact. Sufis, and you think of Sufis as guys who have big bellies and they dance around in mosques with Christmas lights and birthday cakes. Yeah, it's been seen as a very derogatory term. In reality, the term Sufi, it derives from a science called tasawwuf. Tasawwuf is part of the Fard al-Ain. It's a science in Islam. So it's not a term, it's a science. So one cannot really be a Sufi. Identity politics is the biggest disease in the post-colonial era. In fact, it's what caused colonialism, divide and conquer. Yeah. That you are this and I am that. And then one makes themselves into smaller groups, until it's only you and your local masjid. And then you end up fighting with yourselves. It's a very important realization to know that we are a diaspora, we are a minority, and we are forming a minority within a minority. And for one to do that, you're just going to lead yourself into a compounded delusion. A society we cannot develop while we bicker and fight amongst one another. Like the day what you do Eid on, yeah, whether you do Mawlid or whether you Khatam on, these are tertiary issues, they're not primary issues. These are fiqh masail, there's valid ikhtilaf, valid differences of opinion. And that's a very important precursor. So when we say what is our identity as Muslims, we say we're Muslims, فَهَلْ أَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. In terms of the methodology that we adhere to, it's Sunnism. Sunni is not even a label, it's an ideology, it's a methodology, it's how we understand Islam. It's the vantage point and the lens through which we understand the tabligh al-da'wah, the message of Islam. And further than that, there's no real, one can go further into the madahib al-arba'a, the four schools of fiqh, and say they are Hanafi, In reality, that's another fallacy. We adhere to the rule book of the Hanafis, and that's necessary to adhere to one of the 4 rule books. But to label oneself and ascribe that label to oneself and say, I am this, that's very problematic. Yeah. So very simple, keep it basic. فَهَلْ أَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ? The divine ordinance, God says, فَهَلْ أَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ? Say that you are Muslims. Yeah. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Hold tight to the rope of God and do not divide, do not do tafriq, don't split into groups. So sectarianism in Islam is haram. Yeah, bickering and debating and fighting amongst one another is not going to get anywhere. This is what we call, why I'm covering this, is because this is the adab of ilm, this is the etiquettes of knowledge. One can't even open this book until we've covered this. Yeah, because it's a very important thing to rectify one's intention before one begins on a journey to understand Islam. Why am I doing this? What's the point? Am I doing it to act clever? Am I doing it so I can prove people wrong? Am I doing it to refute people? Yeah. Or am I doing it so I can get closer to God and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam? What's my actual maqsad? What's my intention? What's my end goal? That's a very important consideration. So fiqh was a category of action. Aqidah is a category of, or the faculty of, knowledge and belief. And tasawwuf is the faculty of category of emotion or the inner reality. Any questions on any of that? You got a chance to ask, otherwise I'm going to pick on someone to explain what I've just said. Is there any questions? Does that make sense? These are very important, that's a very important taxonomy. It's very important compartmentalization. Because if we can't understand, the question what you might ask me, and this is a valid question, where the hell are you getting that from? You're just giving random, where's that actually deriving from? You're just giving me a compartmentalization of these 3 sciences. Where is that in Islam? Is that in the Quran or Hadith? And the answer is it's in the Hadith. One of the most famous Hadith that we study at a very young age, the Hadith of Jibreel alayhi salam, the Gabriel tradition. This is the second Hadith in the Arba'in of Imam Nawawi. It's in Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, muttafaqun alayh. This narration goes that one time the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he is with the companions, and a man appears, and this man, he has come from the desert, but there's no signs of dishevelment upon him. There's no signs of dust or sand upon him. He seems clean, and he's got long black hair. And this man, he comes and he sits next to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yeah, he puts his hand either on his knees or the knees of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is the hadith of Jibreel. Then the narration it goes, عن عمر رضي الله عنه أيضا قال بينما نحن جلوس عند رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ذات يوم إذ طلع علينا رجل شديد بياض الثياب شديد سواد الشعر لا يرى عليه ثر الصفر ولا يعرف منا أحد حتى جلس إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فأسند ركبتيه إلى ركبتيه ووضع كفيه على فخذه وقال يا محمد أخبرني عن الإسلام. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم الإسلام أن تشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمد رسول الله تقيم الصلاة وتؤتي الزكاة تصوم رمضان وتحج البيت إن استطعت إليه سبيلا. قال صدقت فعجبنا له يسأله ويصدقه. قال فأخبرني عن الإيمان. قال أن تؤمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله واليوم الآخر وتؤمن بالقدر خير وشر. قال صدقت. قال فأخبرني عن الإحسان. قال أن تعبد الله كأنك تراه فإن لم تكن تراه فإنه يراك. قال فأخبرني عن الساعة. قال ما المسؤول عنها بأعلم من السائل. قال فأخبرني عن أمراتها أن تلد الأمة ربتها وأن ترى الحفاة العراة العالة رعاء الشاء يتطاولون في البنيان. ثم انطلق فلبثت مليا ثم قال يا عمر أتدري من السائل؟ قلت الله ورسوله أعلم. قال فإنه جبريل أتاكم يعلمكم دينكم. It's important to quote the Arabic. Why? Because the way that the tradition is preserved is through the Arabic language. That's what just differentiates the Islamic tradition with the other traditions. That we have access to our literature as it came down. That is what we call the hadith of Jibreel alayhi salam. Like I said, Jibreel alayhi salam, he comes to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi salam and he says, Ya Muhammad, already we have a question. Remember, who did I say the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam was with? Who is he with? With his companions, elect companions, the close ones. And he says, Ya Muhammad, this man that they don't know. What's problematic with that? What's problematic with just those 2 words, Ya Muhammad? From the perspective, imagine one of the Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu is sitting there, Yeah? And the man comes and says, "Ya Muhammad," what's problematic with that? Well,
Doesn't know him personally.
yeah, so imagine that you haven't seen this guy, you're a close companion, yeah? And somebody who you don't know comes to the person that you're very close with and he says, "Ya Muhammad," to him. What's wrong with that? What's the problem?
That you don't know them, that they're speaking to your friend as if they...
Yeah, as if they know him, or what would it demonstrate if you call somebody on a first name basis?
That you're close to them,
Or
like a personal friend.
Likely, or what? If you're not a close friend to them, by calling them by their first name, what's that? Is that a sign of respect or disrespect? Disrespect. The companions are, hold on a second. Ya Rasulullah, Ya Habibullah, Ya Nabiullah. He just comes and says, Ya Muhammad. So already the companions are a bit, on edge, what's going on here? And I'll actually explain why did he say Ya Muhammad? Because now I told you it's Jibreel alayhi salam. And the scholars give different interpretations. One of the interpretations, he says Muhammad because of how close he is with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam knew that. The companions didn't, but the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam knew and Jibreel alayhi salam knew. But there's a better interpretation actually. Because some people might this is a problem of misunderstanding hadith, misconstruing hadith. That now one may say that it's fine to call the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam by his name. You get it? So that's fiqh al-hadith. It's not permissible to call the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam by his name in that fashion. Of course it's not. So the second interpretation, this is actually more fitting. When he says Ya Muhammad, he was not calling the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam by his name. He was not calling the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam by his name. What does Muhammad mean? What does the word Muhammad mean? Yeah, the one who's most praised. He was not calling him by his name, he was calling him by his title. Oh, you are the one who's most praised. Ya Muhammad. He was not even saying the name, he was giving a sifa, an attribution and a description of the best of creation, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. You get it? And this is the ma'rifah, this is the subtle realities behind the words of the elect of God. Yeah. Ya Muhammad, akhbirni an al-Islam. This is the first question. He says, tell me about Islam. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam responds, Al-Islam. Islam is an tashhada an la ilaha illallah. The 5 pillars. That you testify that there's no God but God and Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is the messenger of God. That you pray your salah, that you give your zakat, that you perform your hajj if you're able to do so, and obviously the shahada. Yeah, and Ramadan, the 5 pillars. These are the 5 pillars of Islam. It's quite interesting how that translates as a paradigm. Because what did I say? I said fiqh. And in this hadith, Islam is referring to fiqh. You get it? Why? Because those 5 categories, they are the 5 pillars of Islam. They are all actions. When you say the shahada, you're saying words. When you pray, you're doing words. You're doing actions. When you pray in Ramadan, or when you fast in Ramadan, you're fasting. These are all actions. When you perform pilgrimage, action. Therefore, from the first paradigm, this first question, Islam is what? Fiqh. Second question. Ya Muhammad, akhbirni an al-iman. Tell me about iman. And the Prophet ﷺ, he explains the 6 articles of faith. That you believe in God, that you believe in the angels, that you believe in the books, that you believe in the prophets, that you believe in the last day, you believe in predestination, good and bad. Meaning, everything comes from the will of God. And that translates to what? The science of aqidah. These are beliefs. You don't say these words. These are beliefs that you hold in your head. Therefore, in this hadith, what is called iman is called aqidah in our tradition as a codified science. Number 3, akhbirni an al-ihsan. Tell me about ihsan. And the Prophet ﷺ, very profound response. And remember, there's another point that Jibreel ﷺ, when the Prophet ﷺ told him this, he said, sadaqt. And now the companions he said, you're right. So he asked a question, and he said, you're right. Imagine I ask you what the time is. I've just looked at my watch, it's 2:15, and then I ask you what time it is, and then I say, you're right. What was the point of you asking me the question if I already know the answer? So the companions are like, what's going on here? Number 1, he's asking a question that the Prophet ﷺ only could have known. Yeah, because this is to do with nubuwwah, it's to do with revelations, to do with the religion. Nobody else could have known this. Yeah, except obviously Jibreel alayhi salam. So the companions found it very strange. He's asking a question and he's affirming the response. They said, Ajib, he's asking a question, who is this man? So he did this, he says, sadaqt for Islam. He says, sadaqt for Iman. Then the Prophet, Jibreel alayhi salam says, akhbirni an al-ihsan. Tell me about ihsan. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, ihsan, أن تعبد الله كأنك تراه فإن لم تكن تراه فإنه يراك. Ihsan is to worship God as if you see Him. If you can't do that, know that God sees you. And that is what we, and Jibreel alayhi salam with this part of the narration didn't say sadaq. He did not say you're right. And one of the reasons why is because some scholars say that because Jibreel alayhi salam, he did not even know that reality himself. The true reality, true extent of that reality. So that's why there's a fallacy that some people say that Jibreel alayhi salam was the teacher of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's not true. The teacher of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah. Jibreel alayhi salam was the transmitter. Yeah. So with that, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells him about ihsan. And ihsan, that translates to what? The third science, which is tasawwuf, tazkiyah. And that's what we call the fardul ayn. Yeah, that's where the evidence is. And then the hadith continues about the signs, what we call eschatology, the signs of the Day of Judgment. And one of the signs of the Day of Judgment is that a mother will give birth to a slave master. What does that actually mean? Today's day and age, it's very easy to understand the hadith. And the way that we treat our parents. You get it? So it's one of those ones that a mother will give birth to her parents. Why? Because the way that the mother coddles her children, that they get arrogant and they get reckless and they treat her very badly. It's the parents' fault in the first place, and then it's the children's fault for allowing that to continue, but it starts with the parents. That's why there's a prophetic tarbiyah and there's a prophetic method of raising children, which has been forgotten in our day and age. And then the second sign of the Day of Judgment is that tall, naked Bedouins, meaning Arabs in the sands and the deserts, they will compete to build tall, lofty towers. And one just needs to look at the UAE and the Jewish oil money that they've taken now, and just look at the Burj Khalifa and all of these, these Dajjalic institutions that have been established. That's another sign of the prophecy of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that is essentially the tradition in terms of what we need to know. Fiqh is what? What's it called? The faculty of what? Action. Yeah. Aqidah is what? The faculty of? Knowledge or belief, yeah. And tasawwuf, which is?
Emotion.
The faculty of emotion. Which one of those three is the most likely to be misconstrued and manipulated? What do you think?
Emotion.
Knowledge. Second one, what do you think? Raise your hand if you think first one. Why?
There's political motivations when it comes to like people making decisions when it comes to action.
That's true. That's actually a good point. So if you read like Karl Marx, the Proletariat, the whole point of Marx's manifesto was what? To get the factory workers. He used to hand his manifesto outside factories. What? To engage the masses, to engage the 95%. So one can argue is the action. However, action derives from what? You know those 95%. What were they? Why did they do those actions? What inspired them? Was it their beliefs or was it something else? What were they? What was Marx utilizing to get to the people?
The knowledge.
Was it their knowledge though? Remember, it was their emotions. You lot aren't getting paid properly. Your bread, you need to pay for your bread and your water, and you're working all day in the factories and you're communism, emotion. Because if somebody tells me to do an action, I'm going to ask why. You tell me to pray in a certain way, I'll ask you where's my evidences. Give me a hadith, give me a Quran verse as to why I need to raise my hands before I begin the prayer. Give me Fatu Surah. Give me my verse. When it comes to belief, if you tell me to believe in something in the religion, give me an evidence. Show me the hadith, show me the Quran that I should believe in this principle. Whereas when it comes to emotions are a term of the heart, and the heart is the faculty of the Prophet ﷺ, between khawf and raja. It's the fact, it's just completely changing all the time, between hope and fear, and between sadness and grief, huzn and raja and happiness. It's just all of the emotions are conflamed within this paradigm. In a day and age where our emotions change as fast as our state of hunger. Yeah, you wake up hungry and you wake up happy, and you got to sleep full, but you got to sleep sad. Partly due to the society that we live in, there's all this social media coming in, and that's affecting the way that we feel. Subconsciously, we don't even know it. But in the Islamic tradition, especially in the past 100 years, yeah, after the fall of the Caliphate, where tasawwuf has become decentralized, and you get all of these fake charlatans, like you get that chuf guy, he's a Dajjal. You get it? The reason why this has been misconstrued is why? Because it's the faculty of emotion. It's the faculty of emotion. Imagine I say to you, are you okay? Are you really okay then? It's okay if you, do you get it? It's literally, it's okay if you're not okay. I can see in your eyes. I can see, do you get it already? Your face is changing. That's how they operate. That's just what it is. 48 Laws of Power. Who's read that book? Robert Greene. I bet you he's taken half of it from half of these beer cults. Yeah, he probably did a bit of research on them. That's how they operate. Just money making and scamming. And the reality of it in today's day and age, to find a Shaykh al-Kamil, to find a perfect guide, to guide you on the path of tasawwuf, one needs to be a Murid al-Kamil, he needs to be a perfect student. And to do that, you need to have knowledge. This is why what we call Sharia is the outer sciences, fiqh and aqidah. Sharia, it cloaks the tariqah. Yeah, the outer cloaks the inner does not cloak the outer. If somebody tells you an emotion or tells you to do something that goes against the Quran and Sunnah, then that's haram. We abstain from it. We don't go near it. Whereas the true tasawwuf, the true tazkiyah is that which is embellished within the cloak of Sharia. Does that make sense? So that's why it's very. And the person who kind of codified this in such a fashion was Imam al-Ghazali, Hujjatul Islam, almost 1,000 years ago. He wrote his famous book, the Magnus Opus, the Ihya Ulumuddin, the revival of the religious sciences, which is basically a book of 40 volumes covering, it's the earliest book in human psychology, like a chapter on solitude, chapter on friendship, chapter on prayer, chapter on traveling. There's 40 different volumes that govern human life. So again, he was nearly 1,000 years ago. And Ghazali's teacher's teacher was Imam al-Qushayri. He says in his Risala, like if anyone wants to study Tasawwuf, it's the first book you go to. Risala al-Qushayri fi ilm al-Tasawwuf. He says in there that this path of Tasawwuf, it's gone. He says the path of piety has rolled up its prerog, and it's been replaced by charlatans and fraudsters who have introduced innovations and bid'ah within this tradition. He says that 1,000 years ago. He even says that if a man flies in the sky, it does not mean he's a friend of God. Imagine you get a guy, it's not logically impossible for somebody to fly. Because miracles are possible, and miracles are possible both for prophets and for saints. You get it? So imagine a fly starts dancing in the sky. Yeah. For you to start dancing, it's not impossibility. Yeah, that's fine. 1 minute.
We'll do azan now.
Yeah, 1 minute. That's fine. So for one to start flying and dancing in the sky, it's not an impossibility. It's not logically impossible. Why? Because it's in the power of God to create a change. You get it? God can cause you to start dancing and flying in the sky. So it's not a logical impossibility. But if one were to do that, it does not mean he's a wali. So let's say this chuf, he actually does have powers to cure people. Does not mean he's a wali, he might be a shaitan. Because that's what the Dajjal does. Remember, the Dajjal brings people back to life. Do you remember the narrations? So that is not necessarily a point of a proof of sainthood. It may be the opposite. So that's why it's very careful when it comes to the science of tasawwuf, to be very careful. Inshallah, we'll carry on straight after Asr, Jama'ah. Yeah, we'll probably have this stuff for a while. Go on.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا سيدي يا حبيب الله الصلاة والسلام